You're listening to Living in Spain podcasts with David Wright.
Hi guys, and welcome to another one of my shows. My name's David Wright, and today we're going to be talking about buying and selling property in Spain. Personally, I believe it's a good idea to rent first to find out some things that you might not understand about the area and what's going on in your local community. For example, first time I was here in Spain, I rented an apartment right near the beach. It was a lovely place. I absolutely fell in love with the area, and the first couple of months was fantastic. I really wanted to buy in that area. I looked hard at property and found a couple of places that I wanted. And then one day I woke up about 6 o'clock in the morning to banging plates and crashing dishes, and I thought, what the hell is this? And it was in June, and there was a hotel a couple of streets behind us, and they had the windows open, and all the staff, the kitchen staff, were preparing for breakfast, and the plates were banging and crashing, and then there was delivery trucks coming and doors and banging, and this went on for a couple of months throughout the summer. And although I was working at the time and I was getting up early, this started around 6 o'clock in the morning, so it was a little bit early for me, and it really did start to get on my nerves and make us feel a bit depressed about where we were actually living. And we decided that we really didn't want to live somewhere quite close to a hotel. Now, the apartment was fantastic, the location was fantastic, but the bar and the hotel that produced all the noise in the summer months really put us off from buying in that area, and we ended up moving to another area and renting there for a little while before we actually bought. So by renting in an area, you get to find out these things, and some of these things can really make a big difference. Whereas if we had bought in that area, although I did love it there and everything was great, imagine if I bought an apartment in that building and I'm going to have to live with that every year, day after day in the summer months. It was really depressing. So another thing, a friend of mine here went to look at a property with an agent, and they were shown the property twice. They went back there twice to look at it. They fell in love with it, so they went back for a second time, and absolutely nothing wrong with the place, perfect. They were ready to put a deposit down, and he said, well, I'm going to go back there on their own tomorrow and just have a look around the outside area. And they went back at lunchtime. Now, each time they'd gone to look at this property with the agent before was early in the morning, and it was quiet, it was lovely, they just loved the place. Well, this time he went with his wife, and they pulled up around 2 o'clock, walked around the area, it looked okay, and then a few cars started to pull up, and they parked on the pavement right outside the property that he was going to buy. And then more and more cars turned up, and it turned out that there was a school just at the corner of the road, and they picking everybody up from school at 2 o'clock, all the parents, and they parked outside his house. And although this was only for a couple of minutes, there was a major traffic jam in the street. Cars couldn't pass properly, hundreds of kids coming out, screaming and shouting, and then within 20 minutes, half an hour, it was all gone. And this was going to happen every single day of school days. So, this really put the guy off. And if he hadn't have gone there on his own to have a look around at a different time that he went to the time that he went with the agent, he would never have found this out. So, say you find a place you like, go with the agent, but afterwards, go there in the evening, see what it's like in the evening. Is there a club nearby? Go there early in the morning. Are there special deliveries for bars nearby that's going to interrupt your peaceful, perfect house? Things like this. So before you actually commit to buying, really check the property out at different times. And if you can, go back a week later, because things change here, during the week. So these are some great tips to go and find your place and buying here. Now, when you actually commit yourself to buying, if you can take somebody that speaks Spanish with you, it's a big help here, or you're going to have to pay somebody that speaks Spanish to go with you. Now, I'll give you a little example. I actually, on one of the first properties I wanted to buy here was an apartment, and the apartment was up for sale at 120,000 euros. This was about 17 years ago. It was a two-bedroom place. It was a very nice, right near the beach, and I wanted it. The price was right. I could afford it at that time, and there was no problem. I was going to pay for it. 120,000. with the agent. And when I actually phoned up the first time to view it with the agent, obviously they spoke English. My Spanish wasn't very good then, and they told me the price, 120,000. So we went to look at it, loved it, everything fine. A few days later, I phoned the agent up again and spoke to a different agent. The agent I'd first spoken to was off that day, so I spoke to another guy. And I had said, about looking at the property, and I'm interested. And he misunderstood me, thought I wanted to have a look at it, and he said, "Oh yes, the property's 114,000." And I thought, that's 6,000 less than the other person said. I said 114. He said, "Yes, that's right. Would you like to look at it?" So I said, "Yeah." So we went back to look at it just to make sure it was the right property, and it was exactly the same property with exactly the same agent, and it was €6,000 less. So I said to the agent, I think I looked at this property before with another agent. And he said, "Really? Who was that?" And I said, "What is this lady, and I talked to him. He said, and he seemed a bit fluxed about the conversation. And so he said, "Let me check with my colleague, let me check." Anyway, later that afternoon, he said, "Yes, it's 120,000. So obviously there's something funny going on there. So I said to him, "Well, look, we've seen somewhere else that's 114. We're going to go with that." "Oh, well, maybe I could speak to the owner. You can get it for 114,000. So I said, "Well, if you can get it for 114,000, we would be willing to put a deposit down today." Anyway, about 20 minutes later, the phone rang. Yes, we've talked to the agent, the owner, and you can have it for 114,000. So it looks like they were trying to pull a fast one on me, and this goes on a lot here. It goes on with a lot of agents. So in the end, we got it for 114,000. So you have to be careful, guys. Take somebody with you, and when you initially phone up, it'd be a good idea to speak Spanish to them, or get somebody that speaks Spanish and inquire about the property in Spanish. I sometimes find that if you don't speak very good Spanish and you speak English, the price actually goes up a little bit for people that are English speakers. Spanish tend to get a lower price. Now, this is something I've found several times, so it's not just something I've got against the Spanish. It actually happened to me on my 2 apartments I bought here, and on the last property, which is a piece of land I bought here. The same thing happened, and when I bought my house, before I bought the land, I had the exact same thing happen then. But I spoke Spanish then, but with a strong accent, and there was a variation in the prices with the agent on the house, which later they came down on. So this has happened to me a few times, and I know people that it's happened to as well. So the good tip here is speak Spanish to somebody. Get somebody that speaks Spanish to phone up first to inquire about the price, or speak to the agent and say, "Look, I'm interested in this property. What's the real price on it? What is the lowest you can go?" And if they think you're a serious buyer, then the price, often they can negotiate the price with the owner, and all the prices here are negotiable. You don't have to pay the fixed price. In fact, I've never paid the fixed price for property here since I've been here. So here's a really good tip. If you're buying a property here in Spain, go to your local council planning office, look for the big book and check it out. Now, what do I mean by the big book? Well, all the local planning offices here, normally in your local council building here near the town hall. Go and ask the town hall, they'll tell you what it is. Local Planning Registry Office. Now, it's free to go in, and you have a right to have a look at the book for free. This is all for free. I would suggest being able to speak pretty good Spanish, because they won't speak English there. Now, when you go there, to give you an example, I went to the one in Almeria, and I've done this on the last 3 properties I've bought here. You go to the Planning Registry Office, ask to speak to the Planning Registry Officer. Now, there'll be 2 or 3 working in a little office somewhere, and it's full of paperwork and books everywhere. And you take the property that you're interested in going to buy or rent out. So take the registry number. Now, the registry number will be or plot number, as they call it here. Every property in Spain or land in Spain has a registry number. To get hold of this number, it'd be on the escritura, on the deeds of the property. If you haven't got the deeds or can't get hold of the deeds, ask the agent, the estate agent, or your solicitor or lawyer, what is the registry number, the plot registry number of the property. Now, this unique number is all the Spanish properties and land has this number. Take that number, go to the Planning Registry Officer and say to him, we're thinking about buying this property. Can you give me some details? He will look that number up in a book, and it is like a big doomsday book here. Well, when I went to look at my last property, the piece of land I bought to build my house on, he opened up this book, and the book was about 2 foot square, big old dusty book. And he opened it up, flicked through the book, and he said, this is it. And on that plot, he can pinpoint exactly where on the map that is. And on the map, it shows you the boundary of that property officially as it's registered with them. Now, what the owners of the property sometimes do is move the wall a foot inside or outside of that border. But what he has got is law. If it's not registered as he has it registered in that book, then you will have problems in the future. One property I went to look at here, it was a square piece of land, and in the book, when we actually got to the book, there was a corner cut off at an angle of 45 degrees, and it was about a 4 metre square angle cutting through this square on the corner of the property near the street. When I asked what this was, because we said that the property is square and the wall around it was square, why is the corner cut off? And he said, that corner, you don't own that corner, it is owned by the council. And I said, but the owners put a square around it. He said, yes, that is okay. He said, but on that corner there runs a pipe underneath there which belongs to the council, and they have permission to come and dig that up at any time they want. But the owner has registered the property, and he has been allowed to put a wall making it a square corner, not a 45-degree angle. And this all seemed a bit weird, but it was in the book, but it wasn't on the deeds of the property or anything like that at all. So imagine a bit later on and you've built a garage on that corner, they've got an entitlement to come down and cut up underneath your garage or knock the garage down to get access to that corner. So that was something we found out, and there was a few other things on that property that we didn't like, so we didn't buy it. The other thing is the land that I bought here, it showed it as square. In the book, on this registry book, it showed it as slightly askew. The corners weren't 90 degrees. It was a little bit off. And when I asked about that, he said the street looks straight, but it's actually not straight. And so it had points on the corners where the land would be marked out, and you had to follow those lines. So obviously that's where I built my walls, my outside walls of the property. Now this is quite a major thing. When you're building 6 foot high walls all around the property and gates, and you've got to build footings and foundations, you want to make sure you put them in the right place. Otherwise, when the neighbour comes to build and you've built on his wall, imagine the problems you're going to have. So the Land Registry Office has all these details with the boundaries. Also, if it's an older property, as when I went to look at a building we were going to buy to demolish, this older building, the woman, the owner, said that the garages, she had 2 garages built on the side of the house, were fairly new. And I said, you got permission, everything. Oh, yes, everything's okay, we're all fine and that. Anyway, when I went to the Land Registry Office, these 2 garages were not on the deeds. They weren't shown on the plans. And I asked about it, and he said if it's not on here, she hasn't got permission, because if she would have gained permission, there would have been an extension or a piece of paper there or a note to say that the new extension is accepted, and it wasn't. So he said you can apply for it, and I know what it's like here, applying for permission for something you've done after the fact. They probably refuse you permission, or if the best case scenario, they would grant you permission, but you would have to pay a fine. So yeah, these 2 garages weren't on his registry plans, and so we went back to the agent and we spoke to them, and they said, "Oh, that's not a problem. When we signed to buy the property, you can do the new escritura for that in the deed to the notary." Well, that's not the case. I spoke to a solicitor here, and he said that is definitely not the case. They've got that up as an illegal build. They could end up taking it down. It could be a nightmare to get the notary to sign paperwork to do that, and nobody's going to be really happy about that, and it could take a long time to do. So we passed on the property. But these are little things you can do in the Planning Registry Office. You can see if it says in the book that it's a 3-bedroom property and they're selling it as 4, things like that. So take somebody with you that speaks Spanish, see the Planning Registry Officer, ask to see the book, show him your plot number and say, can you give me some details? And there will be notes in that book. There will be a page with a plan, a drawn out plan showing you exactly where the property is, where it's situated, the meterage, the walls here have round it, the boundaries, what is next to you, what is in front of you, and they will also tell you if there's a place behind or in front, if there's going to be any new building. If there's, say, couple of old buildings derelict in front of you, they will tell you that, that land is designated for building. They could be building a high-rise building there, things like this. So there's a lot of things you can find out from the Land Registry Officer. So go and find that out. If you don't know where it is, go to your local town hall, ask them to speak to the Land Registry Officer. Go in there with your plot number of your property and get some research done and save yourself a lot of time and headaches. So there's a few tips on buying property in Spain. I hope these have helped, and stay tuned for the next one.
If you have enjoyed this podcast by David Wright, then you will love his new books. Out now on Amazon and Kindle, packed with money-saving tips and information on living and working in Spain. Just go to livinginspainbooks.com. David also has a popular blog for expats in Spain. Come and take a look now at britishexpatsinspain.com.